Action.
Right, today we're going to look at major scales, okay? So major scales are made up of a sequence of notes, right? That sequence is tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. When we think of tone, tone, semitone, a semitone is the closest possible note. So if I look on a keyboard, the note C, the closest possible note to semitone is C sharp. But a tone is the second most closest possible note. So if the first note is C, the second closest is D, okay? If I start on any note, say D, and then I go in this sequence, I will get a major scale. So if I start on C, and then I go a tone above C is D, a tone above D is E, a semitone above E is F, a tone above F is G, a tone above G is A tone above A is B, and a tone above B, or semitone above B is C. If I now play that on a keyboard, you'll hear it sounds like a major scale. You can start on any note, E flat, F, G, whatever. You start on any note and you play that sequence, starting from the first note, it will sound like a major scale, okay? Another thing we want to think about when we're talking about that is intervals, okay? Each of these notes is what we call an interval from the first note. An interval is just a space between two notes. We have a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, and then we've got our octave or our eighth, okay? Each of these numbers has a name associated with it whenever we're talking about a major scale. We either have notes that are called major or notes that are called perfect. The notes that are major are 2, 3, 6, and 7. The notes that are perfect are 4, 5, and octave. So in the key of C, D is actually a major second, E is a major third, F is a perfect fourth, G is a perfect fifth, A is a major sixth, B is a major seventh, and C is your perfect octave, okay, your perfect eighth. Every single major scale is made up of this sequence. Every major scale is you start on a note, and then you play the major second, the major third, the perfect fourth, the perfect fifth, the major sixth, or the major seventh. If we were to make adjustments to our intervals, and we made a major note smaller, then we call it a minor note. So if I make the distance between C and E smaller, it becomes C and E flat. Instead of it being a major third, it becomes a minor third, okay? But if I make a perfect note smaller, it becomes diminished. So if I go from C to G, that's a perfect fifth, but if I make that gap smaller, C to G flat, instead of being a perfect fifth, we call it a diminished fifth. If I was to make anything larger, we call it augmented. So instead of going from C to G, if I made that bigger, C to G sharp, that would be an augmented fifth, okay? So I'll play some of those. So if I have C to G, that's a perfect fifth. If I make that smaller, it becomes a diminished fifth. If I make it bigger, it becomes an augmented fifth, okay? So that's intervals and the sequence that makes up a major scale. Now, whenever we want to make up major scales, we want to have a system that actually helps us get the sharps and flats that are in those scales quicker. For sharp scales, we have a phrase we use. The phrase is fat, cat, get, drowsy, after, eating, bananas. We're going to underline the first letter in each word, F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Now along with that phrase, we have a series of names. Just for sharp scales have names associated with them. D major equals da, A major equals Amy, E major equals Emma, B major equals Barry, F sharp major equals Freddie, like Freddy Krueger, not Freddie Mercury, and C sharp major equals Charlie. Now the way that this works is that every major scale has a name associated with it. So D, da, because it begins with a D. B, Barry, because Barry begins with a B. Then we look at how many letters are in that name. Barry has 5 letters in it, B-A-R-R-Y, which means that it has 5 sharps in it. So how do we get those sharps? Well, we go back up to our phrase. If we want to take 5 sharps, we literally just count them as we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fat, cat, get, drowsy, after. So our sharps in B major are F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp. I'm going to do an example of that. So we start with a blank scale when we're working on major scales. Blank scale literally means to just write it with no sharps and flats. B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then we're going to add those sharps. Barry has 5, so that's fat, cat, get, drowsy, after. C at the end of that. Okay. So there's our B major scale. I'll do one more as an example. Let's do A major. So I'll start with a blank scale. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. A major has Amy as the word. Amy has 3 letters. So we take the first 3 sharps, fat, cats, get, and we add them to our scale. Fat, cats, get. Okay, that's it. That's how you get a major scale with sharps in it. To get a major scale with flats in it, we have a different phrase. That phrase is big, ears, and Dumbo, get, cold, feet. Just like the other one, we're going to underline the first letter of each word. So we have B, E, A, D, G, C, F. That's going to eventually be B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat, and F flat. For flat scales, we have words. The first one is for B flat. The word is be, to be or not to be. For E flat, the word is eat. For A flat, the word is army. For D flat, the word is drink. And for G flat, the word is guitar. Just like with sharp scales, each flat word has a word associated with it. So for D flat, we think a word begins with D, drink. Drink has 5 letters, which means there are 5 flats in D flat. So let's do D flat as an example. Again, we're going to start with our blank scale, B, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And now we have to add our flats. So it's drink, 5 flats, big, ears, and Dumbo, get. So that's B flat, big, ears, and Dumbo, get. And we'll add a flat at the end there too. So there's our D flat major scale. We'll do one more as an example. Let's do E flat major. Start with our blank scale, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. The word is eat, so there are 3 flats. So those 3 flats are big, ears, and B, E, A. Big, ears, and we put the one at the end as well because that's a B as well. So there's our flat scales. So that is how we work out the notes that are in major scales, the relationship of the notes that are in major scales, and how we get major scales with sharp notes and how we get major scales with flat notes. Next up, we'll look at minor scales. Cut. Okay, now we're going to look at how to turn major scales into minor scales. Whenever we want to work out minor scales, we always start with our major scale, okay? Basically, we have 2 types of minor scales, natural minor and harmonic minor. Okay, in natural minor, we have this equation, flat 3, flat 6, and flat 7. In harmonic minor, we have the equation, flat 3 and flat 6, okay? Now what this equation means is that we first work out our major scale and then we apply that to the major scale. So if we want to turn our E flat major scale into E flat natural minor, we have to first work out our E flat major scale and then flatten the 3rd note, the 6th note, and the 7th note. Back here I have an E flat major scale already done. So what I'm going to do is turn this E flat major scale into E flat minor. So the equation I have is flat 3, 6, and 7. So I'm going to go to the 3rd note, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to flatten that. I'm going to go to the 6th note, C, I'm going to flatten that, and I'm going to go to the 7th note D, and I'm going to flatten that. Okay. So now our E flat natural minor scale is E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C flat, D flat, and E flat. If I wanted to turn a scale into a harmonic minor, you'll see the equation is to flatten 3 and flatten 6, but we don't flatten 7. So if I go back to my sharp scales, if I want to turn A major into A harmonic minor, I'm going to go to the 3rd note and flatten that, the 6th note and flatten that, but I'm not going to flatten the 7th note. So if I go 1, 2, 3, I have to flatten the C sharp. Now that poses a problem. What happens if you flatten a sharp note? If you flatten a sharp note, it goes down to natural. If you flatten a natural note, it goes down to flat. If you flatten a flat note, it goes to double flat. You can even have double sharp if you were to sharpen a sharp note. So in this case, the note is already sharp. So when I flatten it, it doesn't become C flat, it just becomes C natural. So I'm going to turn my C into C natural. And the same thing for F sharp, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. F sharp is our 6th note, we have to flatten that. So when we flatten F sharp, it becomes F natural. So our A harmonic minor scale is A, B, C natural, D, E, F natural, G sharp, and A. So you can do that with any scale. Work out your major scale first, and then apply your equation, flat 3, 6, and 7 for natural minor, flat 3 and 6 for harmonic minor. Cut. Action. All right, chord spelling. So the way we work out chords is using a system called chord spelling. Chord spelling is like a series of numbers that we take from our major scale to make chords. So we start with triads. Triads are chords with 3 notes, triad meaning 3, okay? So our first chord is a major chord. Remember, you can have these already pre-written and write them in real time. A major chord has the sequence 1, 3, 5, okay? Right, what does that mean? It means that if we were to write out a major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and number it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For a major chord, I take the first note, the third note, and the fifth note. If I go to my C major scale, or any major scale, you just take the number, or the note that is on that number. The first note is C, the third note is E, the fifth note is G. That's it. Now you've got your C major chord. If I want a minor chord, the chord spelling is 1, 3, 4, and 5. So in this case, we take the first note, C, we take the third note, E, but it's asked us to flatten it. So just like with our minor scale, we have to flatten notes. If the note that's in the scale is already sharp, we flatten it, it becomes natural. But in this case, it's natural already, so it becomes E flat. And then we take the fifth note is G. That's C minor. Then we have a diminished chord. A diminished chord has the chord spelling 1, 3 flat, 5 flat. Then we have an augmented chord. That has the chord spelling 1, 3, and 5 sharp. So just like the other two, you take the numbers that it asks for. If it says that you have to make an alteration, like a flat note, then you flatten the number, you flatten that note in the major scale. If it tells you, sorry, I forgot to put sharp in there. If it tells you to sharpen a note, then you sharpen the note in the major scale. Okay. The other two triads that we use are sus2 and sus4. Sus2 is the chord spelling 1, 2, 5. Sus4 is 1, 4, 5. Okay, exactly the same thing. We just go to our scale and we take the numbers that line up with those, or the notes that line up with those numbers. Okay, that's triads. So there's a C major chord, a C minor chord. If I wanted to do a C augmented, I would take 1, 3, and 5 sharp. So 1 is C, 3 is E, 5 sharp. If we go to 5, it's G. So then we sharpen that, it becomes G sharp. So there's C augmented. Okay. Next up we have sevenths. Sevenths are chords that have 4 notes. Okay. First of all, we have a major seventh. Now, a major seventh has a major triad, 1, 3, and 5, and then it's asking for, if you go back to the first video we did, we had intervals and a major seventh. That was the seventh that was in the major scale. A major seventh chord is asking for a major triad with that interval, with a major seventh on top, which means that we're just adding the note 7. So a major 7 chord has 1, 3, 5, and 7. The other type of standard 7 chord is just called seventh. Sometimes it's called dominant seventh, but a lot of the time it'll just be called seventh. Okay. With that, we have a major triad, 1, 3, 5. If it doesn't say the word minor, you always assume the triad is major. Okay. We have a major triad plus a seventh. If it asks for a seventh, we always by default flatten the 7. The only time we don't flatten the 7 is if it asks for a major 7th interval, which it will up here. So a 7th chord is 1, 3, 5, 7 flat. We then have a minor 7th chord. A minor 7th chord is a minor triad. So we learned that in the first section, 1, 3 flat 5, plus a 7th. And it doesn't say major 7th, which means it has to be a flat 7. The next one is minor major 7. So we have a minor triad, same as before, 1, 3 flat 5. But this time it actually does ask for the interval, specific interval of a major 7. So we just write 7. We're also going to do a minor 7 flat 5. Minor 7 flat 5 is sometimes called half diminished. It has this symbol, circle with a line through it. Minor 7 flat 5. So we have a minor triad, 1, 3 flat 5. We have a 7th, which we know we always flatten, flat 7. And then it tells us to go back and add a flat to the 5th. So we just literally do that because it tells us to do that. And then the last one we have is a diminished 7. A diminished 7 has a diminished triad, 1, 3 flat, 5 flat, and a diminished 7. It's the only one where you have to actually change the 7th extra as well. That's a 7 double flat. Okay. Let's do an example of one. If we take our C major scale again, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and we want to do a minor major 7. So we have the first note is C, the third note is E, but of course we have to flatten it, so it becomes E flat. The 5th note is G, and then the major 7th is just the 7th that's in the scale, so that's B. So that is C minor major 7. Okay. Once we go beyond 7ths, we're in what we call extensions. Extensions are 9s, 11s, and 13s. But when you look at a major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and you number it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you'll see it doesn't go past 8. But if you were to go past 8, you can see it would be C, D, E, just keep going. So instead, we're going to remember that 9 is the same as 2, 11 is the same as 4, 13 is the same as 6. So if we have a chord that asks for a 9, 11, or a 13, the letter we'll take is either the 2, the 4, or the 6. With extensions, the name of the extension will always include the description of the 7th, and then the extension is just on top of that. So if I had a minor, major 9, that minor major is telling me what 7th to have on the way up there. So my chord spelling is going to be 1, 3 flat 5, because that minor is telling me a minor triad. The major is referring to a major 7th interval, and then we're just adding a 9. All you do with extensions is you add the number. If I was instead to change that to a minor major 11, then I would just add my way up to 11. You always have to put in every number on the way up. If I was to change that to a minor major 13, then we would just add the 13 as well. But I can also add more alterations. I can say minor major 13, but say I wanted something like a flat 9, I could put that in brackets, and I could also put a sharp 11 in brackets. So I might ask for a chord minor major 13 flat 9 sharp 11. So now we just have to go and fix our chord spelling so it matches. We've got the minor, we've got the major 7, we've got the 9 but we have to flatten it, we've got the 11 but we have to sharpen it because it's asked for that, and we've got a 13, didn't ask for anything like that. So that is our chord spelling. So let's work it out. I'm just going to write the letters underneath each. The 1 is C, the flat 3, we go to E and flatten it, that's E flat. The 5 is G, the major 7 is B. The flat 9 is we go to 9, which is D, but then we have to flatten it, so it becomes D flat. We go to F for the 11, but it says to sharpen it, so it becomes F sharp. And we go to 13, which is the same as A, and we just take it because it doesn't ask for anything else. That becomes A. If it had asked for a flat 13, then we could just flatten that, so that becomes A flat. So this is the chord minor, C minor major, flat 13, flat 9, sharp 11 is C, E flat, G, B, D flat, F sharp, A. Might as well play it for crack. C, E flat, G, B, D flat, F sharp, A. It's pretty funky. Okay. And that is chords. Cut.